Hi, everybody, and welcome to the pregame show for the Matrix Candid Conversations. I'm Mark Gorman. I'm here with my co-host, Brenda Hedrick. I thought you were going to introduce yourself.
I was going to say Brenda Hedrick. Nice to see everyone. Welcome to our, I should know this, sixth Candid Conversation, and another one that will not disappoint. Local media fights back. We've got great panel, Pam Russo from Entercom, Lisa Bishop from Allen Media, and Catherine Badalamente from Graham Media, all who have been responsible for creating, I don't want to necessarily say competitive, but let's say competitive advantages out there against like what we would consider FANG or the digital, system, where local media, who has been traditionally linear broadcasters, do have some cool, innovative products that are certainly of interest and should be of interest to advertisers and agencies in an effort to get impressions and mind share for the advertisers or the demographics that the advertisers want, and not have to use, Facebook, Google, or an Amazon. So pretty cool. Very excited to have these ladies, these women, join us today.
Yep, exactly. It's going to be hosted by one of our Matrix family members, Tim Hanlon. So as people probably know, Tim is always with us here working on Candid Conversations, our annual media ad sales summit, and really not just a friend of Matrix, but as I say, part of the family. So you can tell I'm in black and white today. It's my ode to I Love Lucy. I love sitcoms. No, actually my camera's not working. For some reason last night it went all blue and then it went to black and white, which I've realized is really great because I think it takes 10 to 15 years off of me. So I'm very happy about that. I thought, wow, this is the founding.
I thought maybe you were mourning. I thought maybe you were in mourning, or there was a reason why you went to black and white. There's no color. I mean, listen, you're in South Florida. Shouldn't there be color? I mean, we do have sun in Western Pennsylvania today. Shouldn't there be color in your life? So I thought maybe
very
you were
sunny
telling
now.
me.
I have a big window here. Yeah, very sunny. Very sunny.
It's not a rainy day. It's a camera. It's a camera problem.
Yeah, it's a camera problem. And I'm surprised it's not that old, but who knows? I'm on it all day. Maybe it just got sick of seeing me in color. So anyway, we always talk about this, and certainly in the news. I know Brenda and I have both gotten our first vaccination shots. I think you got Pfizer as well, right?
I did get Pfizer, yes.
That's what I got. So I'm scheduled for my my second shot in the beginning of April. Sorry, little slip there. And when are you scheduled? I assume you got it scheduled. Yeah.
I am scheduled the end of March, so I'm maybe a week ahead of you on this. And we were able to get our shots last week in Western Pennsylvania. My daughter, who's in Maryland, is scheduled on next Saturday. So I do give Maryland credit for, as you know, I'm a Pennsylvanian, and I feel like we have really had an S show of getting the vaccine.
I look at the stats every day, and actually Pennsylvania is now national average first dosage. I think it's 21.7% as of last night. Pennsylvania is in the 22%. So they've actually surpassed the average and are now dramatically accelerating. I am here, as people know, down in Florida, riding out COVID, and I would say we started off well. It has seemed to slow down. And it's interesting because in this area of Southeast Florida, you can't make appointments for 4 weeks. It's 4 or 5 weeks out, whereas the rest of the state is chock full of vaccine, plenty. Tons of open appointments. They can't fill them. So I did a 2-hour drive to go get it. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, so we talk about, Brenda and I were talking earlier, lot of companies are pushing back their opening until September, though I think media in general is considered it's essential, maybe, is that the word? But it is considered a priority industry because they do want news people out and all those kind of things. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, for us, we're still slated to start going back in July. Right now, I'm somewhat optimistic, at least in our U.S. office. I would imagine that in our other offices, that will probably not be the case. But yeah, we keep monitoring. And
yeah, I think from media's perspective, it's probably the people who aren't essential, like news and programming certainly needs to be in there. I would guess it's more administrative or sales people. As you know, I sit on the board of the Alliance for Women in Media, and it came up, some of our representation, Discovery Network, Warner Media, and had indicated also that they were still under a no travel and expected the no travel to go for the rest of the year, which is quite interesting given that we are still planning on NAB, some in-person events in the fall. I anticipate that those events will happen. I do think that they will go on. I think we will get to this summer and there will be a push to start to get, people. I talked to another media company yesterday who is a New Yorker and basically said, look, we as the industry, as New Yorkers, because New York has really been hit hard, right? People have left and businesses are closing, and not just restaurants, et cetera. And she said she felt compelled as a New Yorker to stay in the city and to start, supporting local businesses, restaurants, et cetera. And even though in her company, she said there is certainly a sentiment that do we need to come, back into an office, which I do think is I hope doesn't happen for New York, but I certainly understand that conversation. But I think we've made the turn and it's looking much, much better for this country. And I think for workers who need to go into an office to work. So for that, I'm excited. How did you deal with daylight saving time?
Oh, terrible.
Whoops, sorry.
I always say terrible. So, pardon me. I always say, I can travel to Europe. I can travel to Asia. I mean, years ago, for like 8 years, I covered Asia for work. So I was in Asia on a regular basis, could adjust within a day, change the clocks 1 hour, and I'm a wreck. Now, today, I'm a little better. My alarm went off at 5:30. I woke up as usual, just closed my eyes for a second, and next thing I know, it was 6:50. So yeah, not really great. I did an exercise this morning, not great, but yeah, so it's really not my favorite thing. But what can you do? I know you and I were talking about what's going on in the media news, and we're coming up here on time. We have about a minute left here, but really not seeing as much activity lately. I know we had talked about, Alibaba, some of the push by the Chinese government to have them rid themselves of media. So that's pretty interesting when you think of Alibaba, sort of people think Alibaba, Amazon, and yeah, of course they seem similar. Amazon, of course, Amazon doesn't own the Washington Post. I think that's its own investment.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, they own it? I didn't know if he owned it personally.
You're right. Yeah, maybe you're right. It's Jeff's play toy.
Yeah.
Nope.
Exactly.
Well, Salesforce, Mark Benioff owns Time, but I think it's he and his wife that own Time Inc., not Salesforce either. So these guys have their pet projects potentially. So actually, we are already at time. So as usual, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you look for us in a couple months, being back at the Matrix Studios, Brenda and myself. I know that's always entertaining. Maybe we have a live studio audience. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Deanna to get us started. Enjoy the show.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, hi there, everybody. My name is Tim Hanlon, and I welcome you to the festivities this month for our Candid Conversation, brought to you by our friends at Matrix Solutions. And I'm happy to join you again on screen, as I've been doing quite a lot of work behind the scenes, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, but we can debate that at a later time. And I want to welcome you to this month's conversation that we decided we were going to kind of sort of focus on quote unquote local media, but a different angle. And we titled this somewhat interestingly as Local Media Fights Back. Right now, the narrative that's out there, right, in the sort of media world, right, is sort of the sort of musty, fusty interpretation of what quote unquote local media is, right? In the radio realm, that's, local radio stations. And in the television realm, that's local broadcast stations, right? And both of those being historically very powerful, but very linear and arguably a little traditional by comparison to the brighter, shinier objects brought to us by all kinds of tech firms in the sort of proverbial FANG category, with all kinds of digital targeting and audience segmentations and the like. And we kind of wanted to have a conversation around sort of not sort of necessarily the fighting back per se, but how local media is doing very well, thank you very much, and in ways that are both leveraging the traditional prowesses of each of the media, but also leaning forward and innovating, perhaps maybe not giving enough credit for those innovations that are happening and the leveraging of that. Excuse me, we've got three tremendous folks to kind of weigh in on that topic. And I'm going to let each of them in reverse alphabetical order, just to be different and to make amends for the years and years, I'm sure, of personal disappointments by being last. I'll start with Pam Russo from Entercom. And I welcome all three of you to the festivities, and I look forward to our conversation. How you doing, Pam?
I'm doing well, Tim. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I am Pam Russo. I am the SVP and General Manager of radio.com at Entercom. For those of you that don't know Entercom, we are the second largest radio broadcaster. But much to Tim's opening comments, I really think of us more as an audio broadcaster, since we don't just have traditional over-the-air broadcast stations. We also have plenty of digital products and everything from owned and operated websites to a large podcast business that includes Cadence 13 and Pineapple Street Studios and a recent acquisition of Podcorn, which I'm happy to talk about later as well. I actually came to the company from traditional media. I've spent time at TV networks like Discovery and TLC. I helped to launch TMZ, the TV show that you see on air, as well as TMZ Live and some of their other non-traditional businesses like the TMZ Bus Tour. So I can always tell you great gossip stories when we get together. And I spent some time at Time Inc. Right before their acquisition by Meredith Corp. So I would say I've spent a lot of time in traditional media businesses, always on the emerging media side, handling transformation and reaching audiences on all of the new developing platforms.
I'm a little worried about what that bus tour might be like. I mean, Harvey Levin, either driving or being anywhere near me in a bus is just a frightening proposition, but I'm sure it worked for you at the time.
It did. And Harvey's a much better driver than you might give him credit for.
I'll have to take your word for that, unfortunately. Next on our gallery of stars is Lisa Bishop, Allen Media, but let's call it. So part of the description, Lisa, what's Allen Media Group? What's Entertainment Studios? Tell me about the world of Byron Allen in which you live and work. I think that would be helpful for description purposes.
So it's actually, the local TV, broadcast TV division is Allen Media Broadcasting. So there are definitely several different pieces of the pie when it comes to Allen Media. There is Entertainment Studios, Weather Channel, Local Now, amongst a slew of digital networks. The list goes on pretty long. My responsibilities lie specifically with the Allen Media Broadcasting. It is the arm. We have 12 local TV stations. I am charged with all things digital. So everything from revenue to content to audience growth, product, the whole gamut falls under my umbrella. And really my experience in the digital space and broadcasting has always been on the digital side of broadcasting. So this is going on 21 years for me. And so these types of conversations are just always interesting because a lot has changed in 21 years. A lot has changed in a year. It's completely evolutionizing, sometimes in spans of 6 months. So it keeps things interesting. It certainly isn't boring, and always looking to see what the next thing's going to be.
And on the TV side, right, the Allen group of stations is essentially relatively small but growing, and with a public sort of presence leaning very heavily forward towards wanting to grow that into something much more substantial and scaled. Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, we do have 12, and we're small to mid-market. And so there is a desire to become much, much bigger. So I anxiously await that.
As we all do. A lot of consolidation and a lot of stuff going on in the broadcast space, generally, television specifically. And Catherine, of course, the proverbial last but not least. And I think it would be helpful for our audience to understand sort of where Graham Media fits into its own sort of unique business realm, because while you're your own division, you're a part of a bigger, if you will, conglomerate as well. And maybe that has some effect, or maybe none, in the way you go to business.
Sure. So Catherine Badalamente, I'm Vice President and Chief Innovation Officer. I have worked for the Graham family for a very long time, 21 years. Started out as a sales account executive. So my background is in sales. And one of the reasons why I got my start in digital was because I was one of the first people at the company who figured out how to sell that digital stuff. So that kind of kicked off my career on the digital side years and years ago. Graham Media Group is actually part of Graham Holdings, which is the former Washington Post company. After we sold the paper to Jeff Bezos, we then became Graham Media Group and Graham Holdings. Graham Holdings is a very diverse group of companies. There is other media as part of it, the Slate Group and Foreign Policy, but we also have manufacturing and restaurants and auto dealers. So again, very diverse. Graham Media Group, we have a long legacy as being part of the former Washington Post company and the Graham family, and feel really special. We're thrilled that we actually get to be a part of that legacy. We have 6 or 7 stations in 6 markets, but we call ourselves local media hubs, not TV stations, because of course we have a huge emphasis on digital. We have the #1 local media sites, beating all the newspaper sites in all of our markets. So that was actually a charge that came down from Don Graham at one point, and I'm happy to report that we actually have done it. And we really feel like we have to be #1 in digital as well as #1 on television in order to be both. And that is really something that we've put a lot of effort into the last few years. My job as Chief Innovation Officer kind of spans all things like Lisa's. We are friends and share notes often because we are in charge of everything from sales to content to technology and product. And so we are very busy and have lots to do.
Excellent. Well, so that's all excellent fodder for our chat. Let's get under sort of the skin of the current sort of business situations you all find yourselves in. I'm really curious, and I think our audience is too, is to kind of before we sort of get into sort of how that innovation and where you're thriving and competing against sort of these forces. I think it's important to kind of maybe chat a little bit about sort of maybe where, especially the uninitiated, where the classically defined radio and classically defined TV station group businesses kind of are. There's probably not only opportunity, but I would imagine that a lot of the conversations start necessarily with the challenges, right? Sort of the threats to the traditional forms of business. And in television, there's retrans, there's the ad sales thing. Certainly in radio, ad sales is much more outsized. Maybe just a little bit of some insider's understanding of sort of how you guys are internally sort of dealing with the forces of competition and evil, shall we say, and then we can kind of go to the brighter horizons from that. Is it as all bad as maybe some of the media might sort of portend?
Not sure who wants to answer first. I'm happy to jump in from the back of the classroom as the R in this group. So what I think is really interesting is that, you know, we talk a lot, I think, as an industry about all of the disruptions that we see from other platforms. And I think social media probably is the one that everyone hears most about, that there's more audience on social media, that advertisers spend more on social media. And what I think is really interesting is that, you know, at least for audio, listeners spend 3 times as much time with audio as they do with social media. And about 25% of the time that they spend with media is spent with audio. And it's broken down pretty much 50-50 between what we do in our traditional, what you would think of our traditional broadcast media. You know, you hit your dial in your car, your P1 preset, and you listen to your station. And then streaming, which is something that I think over the last year has really changed, you know, for everybody on this call. You know, our behaviors have all changed. We're not driving to work anymore. We're not commuting on a subway, maybe listening to a podcast the way we did before. You know, now we're at home and we're asking our Google Home or our Alexa or our Roku or whatever it might be to play our station instead. So I think, you know, there's this, I think there's a misnomer that people only consume your brand in one way, maybe the way they thought of it or the way it was originated. But, you know, I think both Catherine and Lisa said, you know, they spend a lot of time thinking about how do they get their content on all platforms to people? How are we number one in digital as well as being a number one broadcaster? And I think that is the focus, is that if you have a good brand and you're putting out good content and good product, and, you know, specifically around news, you're a trusted news source. You know, whether you're the Washington Post or you are WINS in New York or KCBS or KNX on the West Coast, there are people that know those brands, trust those brands, know they're getting their news from those brands. And so they're going to keep going back to them. They may listen differently than they did before. They may even decide that they want a podcast that goes deep into something that we normally maybe wouldn't have done on air because we weren't going to spend an entire hour of airtime doing it. But now we can have those same reporters put that together and distribute it and have it there for when the consumer does have that time to spend with it. They can spend it with a known news source, getting that content the way that they want it.
Yeah, so on the television side too, good translation, right? Brands matter, right? And there's an inherent and maybe unfair advantage, frankly, for those brands, given those decades of heritage and understanding in the marketplace, right? Versus anything digitally new or shiny or brighter or otherwise.
I think that, oh, go ahead, Lisa.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that we have taken it for granted way too long. And a lot of our effort in the last few years has been around, let's not squander the relationship that we have with the audience and really lean into it. If I could take all of the energy that we put towards fretting and pearl clutching over what's happening from all of the other platforms and all the focus we put into putting content on other platforms instead of focusing on our owned and operated, we'd be in a much better place as an industry.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, what brought to light over the last year during this pandemic is, you know, our viewership, both TV and across our digital products, I mean, skyrocketed. So there is a demand for local content, and it is our responsibility now more than ever to make sure that we are delivering to the community the local content that they desire. Very, very important. I also think that really over the last 18 months, the coming together of, you know, there's, you know, doing this for so long, there was digital and there was, you know, the over the air, the TV. And I think over the last 18 months, those lines have really become blurred with OTT. You know, so you have this, it's not new anymore, but this new distribution platform where you're able to deliver your linear TV along with your digital content. There's so many different platforms. There's so many different connected devices. I really do feel that it's blurred almost that what's TV and what's digital in some sense, because the consumer doesn't really matter when they turn on their whatever screen they're watching, as long as they're getting the content that they desire.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is almost two things here, and this sort of neatly segues, I think, into the next sort of part of this is there's a durability right there, right? So either rediscovering or linear, or whether it's COVID or otherwise, or the power of the brands, but then there's also through fits and starts or by rational strategies, a rethinking and a reinventing, shall we say, of those heritages and that durability of what was historically just a one or maybe two sort of pronged media offering into something much more robust and varied. Yeah.
Definitely. I think that we are constantly trying to figure out how we can engage with our audience in more ways and doing it better, and a lot of our effort at Graham was if video is what we do, we better be the best at what we do, and investing a lot in video tech and trying to convince our stations to stop using Facebook Live, and making sure that if we create great content, that experience both internally and externally from a content creator, that part of the reason why they're using that platform was because it was easy. And so we better get better at providing technology that allows them to get their content up fast and as easy as they can with Facebook Live. So a lot of what we are focusing on is let's make sure that both from an internal and external stakeholder, that we are doing the best we can when it comes to providing a great platform and experience.
Yeah, I think traditionally for years, media companies, whether it's print or television or radio, we've kind of all run to these other platforms and put our content there for experiences and grown audiences that love our brands on these other platforms. And we don't have a lot of control over those audiences. We don't have as much reach as we did when algorithms change. We're all impacted by it. It's not always actually to the benefit of the consumer either. Sometimes they would love to see everything that your brand is posting to Facebook, but that's not the way the algorithm works. And so they miss out on some information that they want. And I think it's a transformational change. It's very difficult to say to somebody who programs a radio station, hey, don't use Facebook Live or don't use StreamYard. It's really easy for them to do. Maybe what we have internally might be more cumbersome. And then there's the argument of, but that's where I can fish for a new audience. And, those are tough decisions to be made, because I think there is a happy medium there. You can still serve your audience on another platform, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it might be, TikTok. But your O&O, and Catherine said it earlier, your O&O is really the place where you want to serve your audience, and you can serve them in a platform and product experience that works for them. The data, what they're consuming, what their expectation is, and you want to meet that expectation. And we spend a lot of time talking about fans and super fans. There are those people that love your brands or your experience so much that they're willing to put up with a little bit of a glitch here and there if they need to, because they really are diehard. But how do you turn the fans, or even the prospects, the people that you see coming from social platforms, how do you turn them into a fan or a super fan and get them to really adopt your O&O experience? And I think it does come down to product and putting things like, you talk about like Clubhouse, you want to make sure that you're having that experience in an audio environment where people can speak to each other and create that content. The flip side of that, I think, is, if you've tried to kind of follow who you want to follow in that experience, it's not always quality content. There's a platform for it, and it's easy for those people that want to speak on it and share something, but the experience isn't always great for the listener that tunes in. And so I think that is what all of our brands and our companies do really well. We provide a great experience and a trusted set of content that, you can't get everywhere. I know it feels like it's everywhere, but I do think consumers know where they're getting their news from, and they want to get it from that trusted source. And I think that's what we are. And so it is the product side of it and catching up there. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I chuckled a little bit just when Catherine said, it's almost like retraining. No, we don't want to use the Facebook Live example in particular, because it is easier, and we do have to do a better job at providing tools and workflows for our reporters and anchors to be able to get that content out on our own platforms. we've had to put together some guidelines, I'll say, about when it's okay to use Facebook Live and when it's okay to what to publish, and to use it as a marketing tool and a promotion tool, but not to put everything out there. Because we do unfortunately get burned when they make algorithm changes. And for our group, as small stations, small markets, we're not called upon to do testing of new news features in Facebook. We're kind of the last ones they think of, and a lot of times we don't qualify for some of their beta testing that they're doing because we're not big enough. So we kind of get burned on both sides, but there is a real audience there, so we know we have to be there. And it's making those strategic decisions and judgment calls of how much do we put, how much do we not put, when do we promote back to our site. Those are all things that 20 years ago didn't exist. So the ever-changing business.
Well, yeah, and look, you're a couple of deals away from that not being an issue, right? So to understand, right? Okay, but to understand that right ahead of time, right, is absolutely going to be in your favor. Catherine, go ahead. I think you were going to say something.
I was only going to say that, you're talking about Fang and, what's happening with the Washington Post and ARC. And, we became a client of the Washington Post with their ARC platform in the end of 2019. It couldn't have been better timing for us, with the crazy traffic that we had in 2020 to be able to go on this fantastic content management system and platform. It really allowed us to, exceed, I think, what our wildest dreams were in terms of total traffic. And I'm happy too to say that a year later, we're still seeing those levels of traffic. I mean, we're coming up now in a year, and March traffic was ridiculous. And some of our markets are literally completely, year to year at the exact same place they were last year, which means we did keep that audience, that we did satisfy them, that we did a good job. And so we partnered early with, we continue to partner with the Washington Post and with their ARC team to say, how can we do video better? We got a Google grant, one of their GNI grants, to create something that would allow us to compete with Facebook Live, because again, going back to this issue of it's easier, it's faster, I don't have to jump over a bunch of hurdles in order to get it done, and created an app that allows someone from the field to click their phone on and be on every platform possible. If they want to be on Facebook, they can, or they can just be on owned and operated or on YouTube. And that's the whole idea, is we need to get smarter about how can we create, just a better system for our content producers to be able to get their content out there as fast as possible on every platform possible, and make great editorial decisions about should it be on this platform or not. And so that's just one example of what Graham is doing. And it's to partner with really smart people to be able to help solve some of these problems.
Well, look, it also requires a whole bunch of true and passionate innovation too, right? Because it's that fine line, right? You're describing sort of there are these other platforms and technologies that are relatively streamlined and available to most, that could be supplemental or additionally beneficial to your brands, yet you're also dancing with the devil because all the data and their platforms is basically happening on their time and their rules versus yours, right?
Wow. And that's a huge threat to us. When you're talking about all, the shifting ground underneath us, we have to get better about having our own data. And I wish that we had learned a lesson a long time ago, and unfortunately didn't. And, one thing that the newspaper does have is great subscriber data. We do not have any first party or zero party data. And that is a huge part of the reason why Graham right now is focused on building membership, creating a better relationship with our audience, trying to figure out how to deepen that relationship, frankly, create single sign-on and, a unified user against all of our platforms. So you can log on and we can have an experience that's personalized for you against all of our platforms, learn something about you so that we can satisfy you better from a customer standpoint.
So let's quickly describe that for the audience, Catherine, and then we'll go to Pam and to Lisa as well to hear what some of the areas that they want to sort of, shall we say, brag about that they've brought about in their respective organizations. That membership thing is a pretty unique hook. In a nutshell, can you kind of sort of describe it? It sounds almost public broadcasting like, where one is encouraged to become a member with extra benefits and for some psychic benefit as well. And obviously underneath it is the data and the quote unquote relationship, which has not been a traditional television broadcaster dynamic.
Well, and Pam, she already covered some of this, is this idea of, trying to drive a audience through an audience funnel and saying, we have this massive, audience from a broadcast side, and how can we drive them down deeper into a deeper relationship? The first thing that we do is say that we want them to come back more often on our digital platforms. We call them highly engaged users, people who come back 3 or more times a week, and then driving them deeper to then sign up for an email newsletter and become part of that process. And really huge focus on email newsletters this year. It should be, if every media company just took their focus off of social and put it towards that, they would have a much better business overall. From there, obviously, we want them to sign up and become what we're calling insiders. That's our membership program. And then trying to figure out then a monetization, how do we actually then drive them maybe to sign up for an event or come to a virtual event or actually sign up for more content. And that's really the piece that we're working on now, which is to say, it's so valuable again that I'm actually willing to take my credit card out and pay for something. But just in that middle layer, just trying to drive loyalists, just trying to create a lifetime value for this audience, that alone is really, creating a much better business for us as a media company.
Yeah, I mean, what we learned pretty quickly was that our users that are coming to us through Facebook were the least engaged users. They were kind of like in and out. So newsletters, as Catherine said, has been a huge emphasis of ours over the last year and will continue to be for this year. That is our one connection that we have to get some of that first party data and to have more of a connection. They've grown significantly. We've explored, I think at the time it wasn't called a membership model, but it is now because that's how things evolve. And we kind of sat there and we're like, okay, so we're gonna have them sign in. We're gonna do like a single sign on. They can post comments in the they can chat with us. They can get our newsletter. What else? So we have to be able to give them value to become a member. What's in it? What else is in it for them? Like what's the Parity Plus that's going to drive them to want to take that extra step, give us a little bit more data about themselves so that we can in turn learn more and maybe use it down the road to monetize it. I know subscription models has been a big topic over the last year as well. And, for us for local broadcast TV, who is by its roots free, we weren't going to go and put up paywalls, for our content. So I love how things have evolved into this membership model. And for us, it's learning. The next step for us is learning what is the value plus that we can provide those members, to make them want to take that extra step.
And Pam, I gotta think on the radio/audio side, it's even been more frenetic because podcasting and all that other stuff, it's even happened even faster than quote unquote television's been able to keep up with the dynamic.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, look, I think we see the same data. We look at, email newsletters. To me, it's a great touch point. If somebody raises their hand and gives you their email address, they're super valuable. They also really love your brand and they want to hear from you. But then taking the data that you learn and creating cohorts from it, let's say somebody clicks on a podcast that's in an email newsletter. Well, now maybe they are a podcast fan. And which podcast did they click on? And how do we bring them down another journey, a customer journey, to discover more of those podcasts on our platform, to get them to listen, which is at the end of the day, really what we want to do. We're an audio company. But I also think product's a really big part of it. We have a piece of technology called radio.com Rewind. And what's great about it is that you can scrub back just like on your DVR, which is kind of amazing that the audio industry, I think, didn't have it, or, radio industry didn't have it, because it's what a consumer expects, right? We all have a DVR. We expect everything to be there exactly when we want to view it. Even binge viewing is something that we don't want to wait a week for an episode on Netflix or any other service. We want it right now. But the amazing thing is, you can, if something happens in one of our shows where, Dr. Fauci's on KNX and is talking about, hey, the vaccine's now all going to be available on this date, or this is the latest that you need to know, if somebody sends that to their friend, they have that link that goes directly to that listening experience, exactly to where Dr. Fauci starts talking. And that also, that I don't want to say surprise and delight, but that that feeling of I've gotten exactly what I wanted from this brand and this provider. That's, I think product and technology works best when you don't realize it's there. And so, when it's seamless and there's no friction and you get exactly what you want when you say a command to your Alexa or your Google Home or your other device, and you get exactly what you want, there's no friction and you feel great. You've gotten exactly what you asked for. The minute you have to say, no, Alexa, that's not what I asked for, I want this instead, you're already disappointed with that service. So I think that's really what most media companies are striving for. I know it's what we strive for. We want everybody to have a fantastic audio experience. We want it to be something that it does everything that they want, a listener wants it to do. And we want to make it easier for them to find things. Are we perfect at it? No, but I think like every other traditional media business, we know it's there. We know what we want to do. And we're really putting the resources at Entercom into moving forward on that path to making sure that our product is front and center. And I think that, again, if it's seamless and in the background, no one's really thinking about it. They just go, gee, this is where I'm going to listen, because the experience is always great for me.
Now, that said, though, Pam, you in particular, maybe iHeart as well, and maybe it's radio and audio centric, I don't know, but you have that sort of added benefit of having created and built up a completely separate brand, even arguably an umbrella that either can subsume the traditional call letters or at least be toe to toe with it, right? Versus, say, what I think I would understand from Catherine, and at least on the more classic television broadcaster side, where you do have those channel numbers and those maybe network brand bugs, as well as the call letters, right? I guess the question is, how do you evolve the brand to be more all-encompassing without sort of being held back by the legacy thought process about, oh, that's just a TV or that's just a radio station, right? You see where I'm trying to get in that is how do you evolve that so that it's seamless, if you will, right, to whatever the customer is, whoever.
Well, I think it's a matter of merging your traditional or your, the original business or the original brand, and helping everyone that's around that brand, that loves that brand to no end, to see that, I think I'll give an example that's not necessarily radio, but I remember years ago at Time Inc., when I was in magazine publishing, I had an editor who said to me, you can't possibly put the cover story on our website. No one will buy the magazine. And I think it's a great example because there was very little overlap between a print buyer or a subscriber and the folks that were coming to our owned and operated website for that magazine brand. And I think that there's always this fear of change that we all have. I mean, everybody does. It doesn't matter what that change is. And so understanding that you're not eroding the audience that you have, that audience is still going to connect with you that way, but that there is a bigger audience maybe on other platforms or other ways to access the brand. Again, like I live in New York. I'm currently in Florida. If I want to know what the snowstorm looks like in New York, or let's say, another riot breaks out, or there are protests and I want to know about it, I'm going to go straight to the radio.com app and I'm going to plug in WINS and I'm going to listen to the local broadcast because I know that there are boots on the ground there. I couldn't do that before. I had to be next to that stick that broadcast that radio station. And now not only that, but I can get push notifications from that home station that let me know, hey, you're flying back into New York. There's a snowstorm coming. Probably not a good day to come home. And so I think that that's the other thing. We talk about email, but there's all this new technology. And I think social's part of it as well. People want to be alerted to what's going on in the world around them, either because it's something that is near and dear to them, whether it's the New York Yankees or the Boston Red Sox, or it is your local news in your hometown or where your parents or your friends or your family live. And then there's where you are in that current moment. And I think, we want to be alerted of the information. Everybody wants to be first. I go back to TMZ, be first and be right. And I think whenever news breaks, whether it's celebrity gossip or it's actual hard news that we need to know, a new vaccine has been approved, the same behavior is there. You're quick, you're sharing it with your friends and your family, and you want to be in the know because you want to be the one at the water cooler that has it. And so I think, if you look at it as it's a brand of traditional media or traditional medium, but then there's all these other ways to distribute that content. But to Catherine's point earlier, and Lisa said the same thing, we want to make sure that those experiences happen on our owned and operated, where we have the data, where we can control a little bit of the experience. And I think also we want to make sure that for our advertisers, we're giving them an experience that they feel good about. They know who they're reaching, not just on a social platform.
One of the great things about OTT is that we get to experiment without, risking the mothership, right? And so it's one of the things right now that we have a big enough audience on OTT. We have critical mass. We have enough people to test things with, which is fabulous. Something that we couldn't have said even just 2 years ago. And that allows us to really try new things without necessarily risking the, broadcast linear side of what we do.
Let me ask one last question because we're already near the end of our time. And Lisa, for your benefit, I want to start with you, if it's okay. I want to sort of get a little bit of a sense of each of your respective day-to-day, so to speak, as arguably maybe or certainly probably a relatively smaller group of folks that you're part of. Maybe you're leading such group into leaning forward and innovating and pushing things, right? As a chief digital officer or head of innovation or any of those, the vortex of all of that, that requires some championing of things. And sometimes I would imagine not always to the belief sets, say, of the veterans, say, at the organizations that kind of help bring the company to where it proverbially is today. So maybe a little bit of how do you push the innovation despite sort of the legacy benefits that you're describing? Because I can't imagine it's all peaches and cream every day by pushing those things that you see from the outside and want to move faster.
It's so funny because that is like the epitome of my career as being a digital leader in a broadcast world. It's gotten easier. I think over in maybe the last 4 to 5 years, where it's a little bit harder, I think, is justifying expense and cost to try things. Because in digital, it's like, well, this could come and go. There's, certain things that could come and go, and there's certain things that may have some legs. But at the end of the day, there is real cost and expense. And if we're going to test if we're going to use a station to test, do they have the bandwidth and capacity from a resource level to be able to test this the way it should be tested? So it's not just expense for a product or for a build, but also, on the labor side. So that's probably the biggest challenge is, when there is something new that you want to really lean into, it's okay, how does this have some legs beyond just, this looks really cool, I want to do this. So a lot of the things that we meander into are things that are pretty low risk from that perspective. I'd like to be a little bit more aggressive, but I'll take what I can get, at this point. So yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because it's like, that is like the epitome of my career is first it was getting, understanding that like, hey, we can sell this stuff. We can make money on this digital stuff to, what Pam said is, yes, we need to post it online even before it airs on, on TV and, all of those things when mobile came out, and being able to justify the audience to have a mobile website, a WAP at the time, and then an app, and now we're OTT. So, the good thing for me is I've been working in the industry for a long time. You tend to, and I know Catherine, Pam, the same thing is, okay, there's a little bit of a reputation to where like, I'm not going to sink this ship. So just kind of trust me on this. We need to go in this direction. And that's really what it is, like, just trust me, please. We need to move here. Not a fancy answer, but that's what it is.
No, I get it. The word you didn't mention was heretical, because I'm sure sometimes that's what you're perceived as.
Right,
right.
Right.
Ladies, your experiences?
I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about how we get everyone on the bus. And I think that it's with a lot of small wins. It doesn't have to be big wins, including them in the process. I've learned that over the years, that just coming down with a great idea doesn't work as well as having them be a part of the conversation early on. Buy-in is much obviously better when they feel like they're part of the plan. I think that it is challenging, and no lie that working in a legacy media company and trying to, change a lot of behaviors is a constant challenge. But I like to think that I sometimes joke that I'm that like clown punching bag that just keeps popping back up, that I have a lot of, I want to win and that I'm not going away. So they know that, that this is something that is important to everyone within the organization. You know, having a CEO like Emily Barr makes a huge difference, because she sets the tone and she is proud of what we've done, that we're looked at as being innovative and that we're usually on the bleeding edge of things. And so then I think that really translates to the entire organization, and that's helped, frankly, getting everybody on the bus.
Yeah, I would add that I think at Entercom, actually, I know at Entercom, we've done a really good job. At least our C-suite has done a great job of investing in digital, in new development, in our podcast business. And I think that's really important because it does show that inflection point or that pivot where the company's saying, you know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with our regular traditional broadcast business, but here are all these other places that we want to take a swing. And so I think if you can identify why you're taking the swing, is it to grow your audience? Is it just to create more zhuzh for your brand? Is it to create P&L or an advertiser, or, you know, revenue or something for an advertiser as a vehicle? I think as long as you understand what the purpose is, and then there are those times that it really doesn't hit any of those 3 KPIs. And if you ran a P&L, it would be upside down. But, you know, you get into the major leagues if you can bat 350. And so I think if all of us could, you know, 3 or 4 times out of 10 have a win, which I'm sure that is the batting percentage that we all have, you realize that, you know, taking that chance and giving it a try are really important. And I'm really happy that I'm at a company that supports that. I have worked for other media companies that haven't been that way. And it's really tough when you're, you know, you're that person that said, gee, can we make money off of this digital stuff 20 years ago? You know, and people look at you like you're crazy. You know, to have come this far is amazing.
Well, what's been amazing has been this conversation, and I've got a whole list of questions we didn't even get to. So much for that. We'll throw that away. But perhaps another time we can get into more granulars. But all of you, I appreciate your candor and your insights, because I think your perspectives are unique for a bunch of different levels. And I'm sure our audience ate this up. I know I found it very interesting, and I greatly appreciate your taking time to do it with us. And I want to thank all of you individually. I also want to thank Matrix for giving us the forum to have this chat. Hopefully it was somewhat painless. Yeah. Okay. We'll take those silent nods of heads as a yes. So thank you all very much, Catherine, Pam, Lisa. And again, my thanks to Brenda and Mark and Deanna and Caitlin behind the scenes. And we wish everybody who's watching continued health and safety, and look forward to hopefully seeing you again sometime soon. So on behalf of Matrix, this is Tim saying, see you later. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.